Hello again, rowing fans. Welcome to the Rowing Notebook. Again, second day in a row after day 2 of Henley Royal Regatta. I'm exhausted. If we all thought yesterday was a busy day with 80 races, well, today we had 84. And if that wasn't enough to keep us on our toes, we had additional boat classes today as well. So it was the advent of the student events, so the student events coming along for the first time with Temple Challenge Cup, Prince Albert, Island Challenge Cup, the Queen Victoria, and also the Danesfield. So those last two are also brand new events for women's quads, the Queen Victoria being for students and the Danesfield being for club women. The Rowing Notebook, if you've not seen it before, is a very informal, unscripted account of the day's racing. And for something like Henley Royal Regatta, where there are 84 races today, I'm not going to be able to focus on every single race. But what I will be able to do is tease out some really interesting races, some interesting progression trends, and also use my experience as a rowing coach to try and bring the event to life for you from the perspective of a rowing coach. And there are some very interesting themes. If you've not watched the video from yesterday, do go and watch it. I'll try and figure out a way to link to it, because I talk about what seems to be differentiating winners in the first round versus losers, or second place crews. Sorry, that sounds a bit harsh, but you get the drift. Today we'll do something a little bit similar as well. I'm going to talk about the role of telemetry, and I'm going to talk a bit about how experience at Henley Royal Regatta seems to be something which can really generate a significant edge, far more so perhaps than other events. But let's jump in first of all. Do it back to front from what we did yesterday and start looking at some of the racing. It has literally just finished. I pressed record on this about 30 seconds after the last race of the day, and there were great races right up until the very end. Let's kick off looking at the Island Challenge Cup, Student Women's Eights, one of my favourite events. Partly because since its advent a few years ago, the general standard of women's student rowing in the UK has gone through the roof. That's brilliant in many regards. It's a challenge in others. Some of the bigger programs are really making a go of it and getting multiple crews in. I think, multiple crews here have got A's and B's, and that has kind of squeezed out some of the smaller universities. And indeed, the competition at Henley Women's is so high that many of the crews racing at Henley Royal have also raced in the aspirational academic event or the earlier rounds of the championship event about 2 weeks ago. So the Island Challenge Cup is still an absolutely stonking event, because we also have some crews coming into the draw for the first time, notably some of the big overseas crews like the Huskies, Yale, Brown, Nearus, Ager, Miami. You've got to forgive my pronunciation if you're Dutch, by the way. Please forgive me. A couple of standouts from racing today. No massive giant slaying, it has to be said. However, I was very impressed by University of Bath against Edinburgh University A. Edinburgh University A, one of the stronger women's programs this year, typically in A finals at Bucks, typically one of the stronger crews, it has to be said, and can't remember what round they got to at Henley Royal. They had about a length by the barn bar area on the course, which is around about 700 metres or so into the race, and they kind of sat there looking at Bath in control of things. And Bath did something which is quite hard to do in an 8. They jumped the boat speed. 8s tend to be a bit like a juggernaut. you got to get it going, but the delta in boat speed, you can't really sprint an 8 in the same way that you can a single or a pair. But Bath managed it. They very nearly caught Edinburgh napping. Edinburgh crossed the line looking composed and in control, but I have to admit, if a crew started closing on me in the last 500 metres, and it was really as they entered the enclosure, in the way that that Bath did, it would definitely be a squeaky bum moment for me. But well done Edinburgh for staying in control and staying composed, and well done Bath as well for an entertaining race and continuing to show yourselves to be a programme of quite some note. I don't know whether it's what they're doing in the club itself or the proximity to the PDA in Bath and some of the great coaches that are working out of there, but something is clearly working, and long may it continue. Looking forward to the next round. There are a few interesting matchups. I'm looking forward to seeing Durham University A. They're against Edinburgh, and it should be straightforward for Durham, but the Durham crew has been posting some very fast times. They went over to Ratsburg Regatta, set club records. They're clearly going well. Whether it's fast enough to go all the way against the likes of Miami and the Huskies, etc., and Yale, I'm not sure, but they're going very well. And they're northern, so I like them. And I really do like the way that Will and Holly, the two coaches up there, have built a spirit in that programme. So I will be looking forward to seeing Durham A tomorrow. I like the way they row, and I like the panache in which they've got. So tune in tomorrow for that. Is it tomorrow? Yes, I think. Well, tune in for the second round anyway. Other races of note. The Huskies, University of Washington A, have Newcastle A. Again, should be straightforward for the University of Washington. They've also had fairly decent amount of time since their flight over from, long way away. But nevertheless, it will be interesting to see their first run down the course at Henley and how they kind of get on. As you join me for my walk down towards the River Nid in sunny North Yorkshire, it's like Gladiator walking through my fields of wheat. Make no comments about me not looking like that Russell Crowe moment as he walks around. Yale are also out. They've got Cambridge University B. Again, should be fairly straightforward for them, as do Oxford Brookes University A, have a relatively straight draw against Edinburgh. And then Brown A versus Brown B. But looking forward to seeing these A crews come out and see what they can do. Look at times to the barrier, look at times to Foley, and get an idea of just how quick they are. I anticipate these A crews will be ahead by then, but it nevertheless will be an indicator of their pace. In the Temple, round one was more or less business as usual, apart from two sort of giant slaying moments. Well done to Brookes University E for disposing ALSRV Aspos de Velay of the Netherlands, who were pre-qualified crew. Brookes E, so the 5th ranked crew. Brookes tried to qualify 6 crews and qualified 5, so well done. But that's quite impressive for them to turn over that pre-selected crew. Also, Wesleyan, who overcame GSR Ager of the Netherlands. Again, I apologise for my pronunciation. The GSR Ager crew of the Netherlands being the selected crew there, and the Wesleyan crew overcoming them in the draw. Things that sets up of interest for the next round. Well, honestly, the second round should be relatively straightforward. I don't foresee there being any massive upsets. Brookes AV Syracuse should see Syracuse. KSRV versus Washington should go through. Lager versus Wesleyan, I mean, we should see Lager go through there, but then again, the Wesleyans did overcome a selected crew today, so maybe that's the one to watch. You'd expect Nearest A to beat Nearest B. You'd expect Brookes A to beat St Paul's. St Paul's did very well today to overcome the University of Nottingham. That St Paul's crew is their J16s. So racing at the regatta to gain some experience, but they went out hard, fast and aggressive, clearly put the frighteners up Nottingham, who were unable to get back on terms. They did try, but St Paul's was just too much for them, so well done, boys. Yale raced Durham. Yale should have that one. Cambridge University A versus Bristol should be Cambridge. Trinity College Hertford versus University of London. I suspect will go, well, again, that one could go either way. So some interesting matchups, but it should be, if you like, a progression of the big programmes through the second round towards the quarterfinals. And the quarterfinals, I anticipate, is where the Lumphammer Fest will really come out. That's not to sort of pour water on the racing we saw today. There were some really, really great races. But I think it's one of the strongest temple fields I've seen in a long time. It's a shame, and I will say it's a shame that Brooks have qualified 5 crews. Brooks A, Brooks B, yeah, good. But there's a C, a D and an E, and in my view, there should really be some other programmes getting in there and getting into the draw. I think that's important for university rowing in the UK. I hope that someone will be able to steal a march on it. It's hard to see because Brooks are so strong. Nevertheless, it would be good to see. The other student event that was going on today was the Prince Albert for 4s. Relatively straightforward first round, and it's the second round where all the big hitters come out. I think it'll be interesting in the second round to see Melbourne, who beat University of London today. They go up against Newcastle University. I'm following Newcastle with interest. This is their top crew at this regatta. They struggled to find an 8 with great pace. They've stacked the PA with their best rowers, and they did well at Ratzenberg Regatta as well, choosing not to race at Marlow. I think I have that right. I might be confusing it with another regatta. Anyway, that is a fast crew, but Melbourne are no slouches either. So tune in the second round at the Prince Albert to see how bloody quick this Newcastle boat might be. And it will be good to see, because that club up in the northeast has been through quite a lot of turmoil in the last 12 to 18 months with funding cuts and threats of, I believe the university was even going to sell off the boathouse. So that they're boating so many crews at the regatta of such a high standard is an achievement in itself, but particularly eyes on this 4. And finally, the Queen Victoria Challenge Cup for women's student quads, inaugural day. Just 2 races, UL versus Reading B, and Reading University B went through, and Reading University C beat Edinburgh University coming from behind. I thought it was an interesting race for Reading University C, and it shows the benefit of spending time in the quad. I think, based on what I saw in the race, that Edinburgh are probably the more powerful crew. If you were to stick them all in single sculls, I suspect Edinburgh would probably be the faster group of single scullers. However, Reading spend a lot of time in the quad. They've also got some very good crew boat sculling coaches, and I think that shone through. So they've got an A, a B, an A, who are the seeded crew, a B and a C crew into the second round, this being the quarterfinals, and there will be some really good racing in this second round. I do think Skull versus Reading A will be the fixture of the tournament, and going by the draw, that's likely to be the final. But there we are. Look at this beautiful river. I sometimes come swimming down here. It's about half a mile from my house, and it's a great spot for wild swimming. Not quite good enough for rowing in, I'm afraid, but that's the River Nid. Beautiful part of the world. Let me just rearrange my notes. In the Wargrave, good bit of giant killing in the Wargrave today, everyone. We had London A going out at the hands of City of Cambridge. Sorry, wrong. Yeah, London Rowing Club A going out at the hands of City of Cambridge. I don't think anyone saw that one coming. City of Cambridge dispatched Thames B in round 1, London Rowing Club A in round 2, and they have Thames B in the quarter-final. They've got momentum with them, so who would bet against them? What else happened? Thames B themselves overcame Tyne today, Tyne being a selected crew. And that's their kind of route, having beaten Scullers in the first round, Tyne in the second. Thames B now set up the quarter-final match of the Battle of the Underdogs, City of Cambridge versus Thames B in the quarter-final. Another giant kill came from Molesey C, who I've got a bit of a crush on that crew, I think. Really interesting race against Sydney. Molesey are a hyper-aggressive crew, right? They've got a really good front end, and you can see that they're just riding it with confidence. It's brilliant to see. And that's why, I've got a bit of a crush on them. I love a sort of sea boat coming through a couple of rounds. And Sydney, again, was a selected crew. But what I thought was interesting in this race is the concept of experience. Molesey C have 9 Henleys between them in the crew and 6 in the cox's seat. Sydney have 3 Henleys, each spread 1 apiece. I think it's the 5, the 6 and the 7 seats. And I wonder if just one of the telling things for Molesey C overcoming Vesta and then Molesey C overcoming Sydney is the experience, the confidence between the booms and in the coxes from the rowers and the cox's seat of the environment. I did talk about the importance of that yesterday. So we've got Molesey A versus Molesey C tomorrow. Molesey A are probably going to win, but by God, I would love it if Molesey C got through in the quarterfinal. So, Molesey C, if you're watching this, you got a fan, right? The quarterfinal to watch, apart from the Molesey AC race, the Battle of the Underdogs, Cambridge versus Thames B, I believe will be Mercantile and Leander. Those are probably 2 of the strongest crews in the draw. They're meeting each other at quarterfinal stage, and that'll be a good one to watch and get your kind of head into. Let's talk about the inaugural Women's Club Sculling event. One giant sleigh in this came from Cantabrigian versus Christiana. Cantabrigian rowing through them from the start, really. And I was quite surprised that Christiana from Norway were the selected crew and Cantabrigian weren't when I looked at the standard of rowing. And then at the other end of the draw, Thames B came from behind to beat the selected crew of Swan River, which are Perth in Australia. That sets them up against Strathclyde Park in the second round. We've got London versus Molesey in the second round, Marlow versus Leander, and Thames A versus Cantabrigian. What I think is interesting about this event is how quickly the quality's kind of risen up. I did wonder if the first year of the Danesfield was going to be a bit slow going until maybe the semi-final, final stage, but no, straight off the bat, some good high quality rowing. And I think this is a challenge for clubs now, which is we've got some London A, London B, we've got some B's and C crews. We've got some A's and B crews in there, right? The window for you, if you are a smaller program, to kind of seize the march and get involved in crew sculling and make yourself a bit of a centre of excellence and put yourself in the mix for this event, is closing, because the big programs are catching the march on you. So I would say you've got this year and next year, to get your hand in the fire. And if you're interested in doing a bit of a sculling program, then I would say give it a go, give it a start, and see what can happen. In the Brit, nothing really happened in round 1 that was against the grain. Some good racing. Good to see Thames B coming through, and they've set up an interesting second round against Royal Chester. Thames A against De Hoop will be an interesting second round fixture as well. But I'm going to reserve judgment for the latter stages of that event, because that's when I think the big shake-ups will happen. In general, the standard is very high this year, so that'll be good. And then let's look at the Princess Elizabeth and the Prince Phillip. So that's junior 8s. The junior quads today on both genders had the day off. Get ready for more tomorrow. One of the final races of the day was absolutely brilliant. Westminster versus Shiplake. I do like Westminster. They're a good bunch and good boys, good coaching team. And it was lovely to see them really go off like a rat up a drain pipe against Shiplake. They held it, I think it was till about Fawley, and then Shiplake turned the screw and rode through them. So Shiplake through to the quarterfinals to set themselves up for a race against St Edwards. That will be a good race. Deerfield went out to Wimbledon, KCS Wimbledon. KCS Wimbledon riding on with a bit of confidence, which sets them up quite interestingly against Hampton. Looking at the times that KCS set, I think it will be closer than we anticipated with the Hampton crew in the quarter-final. Hampton reached the quarter-final following quite a close race against Windsor Boys School. Yes, you heard me right. The sculling experts, Windsor Boys, gave Hampton a run for their money in an 8s event. Well done, Windsor Boys, for that. Great to see. And let's see if that gave Hampton the sharpener that maybe they needed. Radley went through Abingdon with ease, perhaps as expected, with some fast times to the barrier and Fawley. Bedford continued their run, beating Reading Bluecoat. Bedford seemed to have some momentum behind them. Bluecoat were no slouches, and it was good to see Bedford, gathering that momentum. St Paul's overcame the Australians of Cand to set up an interesting race against Sydney. I think St Paul's will have the edge, but who knows? And in the Prince Phillip, there was a couple of interesting races today. I was watching to see what the names in the programme today were going to be from St Edwards. The understanding I had was that they were being forced into a crew change because of eligibility questions, because of 3 athletes who arrived late in the year on scholarships. The understanding I had was that they had entered that crew at national schools. They attempted to enter that school at that crew at Henley Women's, were turned down, and that's why they raced at Hollenbecker. I think they went to Hollenbecker instead. And I was waiting to see whether there was an eligibility question for Henley Royal as well, because the talk on the towpath was very much that these athletes were not eligible. However, the crew is unchanged. The seating order has changed, but the names have not. Therefore, the stewards will have, and I guarantee that they will have run over this with great diligence, because it's something the stewards are incredibly hot on, is the integrity of the event, and voted St Edwards, who got a bye from the first round and came up against TBC of the United States of America. St Edwards went through in some style. I did wonder what TBC were going to bring to that race, particularly if the St Edwards lineup had changed. It wasn't. They were outclassed. St Edwards are going well, and they are through for an interesting quarterfinal matchup against Shiplake. The last time these two crews raced was at Nat Schools. Shiplake won. St Edwards have found some more speed, so tune in for the quarterfinal. Also compelled by the Headington Deerfield matchup in the quarter-final. Headington overcame Henley Rowing Club today, as one would expect. Deerfield overcame Latimer Upper, one of the stronger domestic programmes in quite some style. Headington beat Latimer Upper in the semi-final, or it might have been the final, of Henley Women's a couple of weeks ago. Deerfield beat Latimer Upper today. What will happen in this quarter-final matchup between Headington and Deerfield? Tune in. It should be good. And then Row America Rye overcame Enniskillen rowing nicely, but perhaps, well, not perhaps, definitely being overpowered by Prince Phillip. Sorry, not by Prince Phillip. That sounds terrible. They were overpowered by Row America Rye. I apologise for that slip, and to the late Prince Phillip for that that horrendous allegation. Right. So I promised you as well we'd have a quick look at some kind of themes in general that are compelling. So I mentioned experience, and I used the example of the number of Henley races in the Molesey Sea crew compared to the Sydney Rowing Club today, and how that might have been telling in that particular race. But the other thing I would like to talk about is the use of telemetry. There were a number of crews today rowing down the course being beaten comprehensively, and the crews being beaten, many of them had telemetry systems on their boats. And I'm gonna speak critically, but please take this constructively critically. But they weren't rowing the arc. They had significant slip at either end of the stroke, and they were clearly underpowered. And it made me wonder, are they actually using the telemetry? Are we as a sport getting lazy and, chasing data from massively expensive pieces of kit when there are much more fundamental things that we can do? And maybe the coaches, maybe the programs have a reason, but I'll also say those crews that were coming in behind, they were often from programs, smaller programs, which will be the same ones which complain about lack of funding or differences in funding. So whether they've got a sponsor or cobbled together through, a baking competition to buy their telemetry. And it made me think, are we, if you're in a challenger program or an aspirational program, are you putting your money where you're going to generate the biggest difference, or are you putting your money where you see Oxford Brookes doing stuff and going, oh, that's what I need to do to close the gap? And I'll speak frankly here. You do not need £10,000 of equipment stuck on your riggers to tell you if you're powerful enough or if you're rowing an arc. Stick some straws on the side of your boat, and that'll tell you if you're rowing an arc. Look at your 2K scores and your power to weight ratio, and that'll tell you if you're powerful enough. And if you are rowing the arc, and if you are powerful enough, then maybe there's a case for getting telemetry to help you harness the arc and the slippage and the application of the power that you've developed. But if you haven't got to that point yet, maybe you're better off spending your £10,000 on a strength and conditioning coach or a squat rack. If you can't row an arc, maybe it's getting some kinesiology, a yoga instructor, somebody to come in and look at mobilization so you can row an arc. Or fund a training camp and go and get some quality miles under your belt. Now, I realise I spoke sort of quite bluntly there, and maybe a little bit over passionately, but it really did make me wonder, particularly as there was a couple of crews in particular, where I thought to myself, what data are you getting off those expensive bits of kit on your boat, which, by the way, are not weightless, so they decrease your power to weight ratio. And are you acting on them? Because it might be really useful. It might be the case that you hire a piece of kit, and I know there are people like Kieran Clark. He'll lend you, well, not he'll lend you, he'll come and charge you a small fortune to stick some kit on the side of your boat. But then, having looked at the telemetry for a day or two, go and plan a training cycle. Going, oh, well, we're not powerful enough at the front end, so maybe what we need to do is a strength and conditioning intervention. And what we'll come back to in 2 months after a cycle is some testing again to see if we've been able to change that. So telemetry, it's useful, but it's not required to win Henley. If you're interested, I would be delighted to respond to any direct messages you've got or comments below on how you at the club that you're at can do telemetry for pennies using straws and arc markers and maybe even just a stopwatch and some slow motion video to figure out if you're powerful enough. I'd genuinely, that's an offer. I'd be delighted to help some people out with that sort of stuff. Right, that's probably quite enough from me. I'm now going to try and pull this video together and get it posted. I hope this has been interesting. The racing's been interesting, so thank you athletes and coaches and stewards and stake boat people and launch drivers and people making PIMs for making it as good as it has been. I'm looking forward to getting down there myself at the weekend. I've got work this week, so unfortunately I can't get away, but I will look forward to joining you on the riverbank soon. Comment, like, comment, subscribe, make the channel better by telling me what I should do more of or less of. Have a good evening, and if you lost today, Catherine Wheel, they do table service now.